Now, if you didn't see it, I already have part 1 of Adam Warlock's trial out. It is a written version where pretty much I just use text to convey my thoughts on the character, but now it's time for the gameplay. And for the first test, we have the TREX trial. Now, this is like a new idea from me that I've never really done before on the channel, but basically, if you are a strong DPS, I'm going to test you against this TREX here, because this TREX has a ton of damage coming at you, right? But if you're a true DPS, you can outdamage his rock field. And Adam Warlock, we're going to see how he does in this fight. And this TREX is not easy in the slightest. There is a ton of damage coming at you, and most characters just cannot take this fight whatsoever. But if you're a very strong damage dealer, there is a chance that you can just outdamage this TREX. And Adam Warlock right here is just crushing it so far. Those 15,000 light attacks, those 24,000 mediums, it is looking pretty good for him already. And he has a pretty good advantage with the stasis pod. Now, the stasis pod is an ability that lets him mitigate all damage output, including TREX's rock field. So he has that very strong safety net on every single SP2. So keep that in mind as well. The SP2 is a pretty massive just damage mitigation source, and for TREX's rock field right here, it is a massive help for sure. Additionally, he gets regen from it as well, which should offset the rock field damage a bit. So yeah, Adam Warlock for this fight is looking really good. And here we drop a nice 67,000 crit. This is just some beautiful damage output now. The matchup is pretty much over. Just need to get like one more cycle going and then that'll be it. So yeah, I would say the trial so far is looking very promising for Adam Warlock. We dropped the relic and that just does it. So trial 1 complete. Now, in my written trial, I said that Adam Warlock is mainly a quester because with his playstyle and his consistency, I feel like he is best suited in game modes where you have multiple tries to get something done. And I kind of stand by that still, but after today and like recording all this gameplay, he honestly is a lot more consistent than I thought. And it really just depends on you for the most part. Now, of course, the AI can just mess you up big time, but then again, if you can maximize his abilities, you can at least try to minimize that. Now, it's not guaranteed, of course, but it can be minimized quite a bit. So that's why Adam Warlock, I'm still very 50-50 on, and this gameplay does help me pick my side a bit more, but then again, there are just so many different factors to this character. But here I go back in, I drop a combo into the SP2. No, I don't. I'm about to special attack like a smart person. Now I drop the SP2, and then the fight is not over yet, and he gets the stun on me, but we can just phase past it, and that is that fight complete. Now, the rest of these fights all have some pretty good value towards them, like right here, Guillotine 2099. What do you do when you don't have the counter to a certain mechanic with Adam Warlock? For example, Guillotine has miss. Adam Warlock does not counter miss. So what do we do here? We play around it and try to utilize his mechanics. So right here, the SP1 just knocks her down again, refreshes the timer, which is perfect because that timer means that there is no miss to be found, right? Which is good. We want that to happen. Then we go back in here, drop the relic, knock her down again, and now we're in a very good spot with a 55,000 heavy attack as well. So we can go back in now, then just hold our combo for a bit, time this perfectly, drop the SP2, and now the timer is refreshed again. But here she drops the SP2, and he reverses me, which is not good, but it's whatever. We're still in a good spot here for the rest of this fight. But yeah, see what I'm doing here? Just utilizing his mechanics. Here she has the cloak, so I drop the relic, wait a bit, drop the SP1, wait for it to fall off, then drop it again after this, and then the fight is now over essentially. So that was mostly clean, and we did it with utilizing his mechanics and just timing everything really well. Now we have this Craven here, and this is a prime example of what do you do when the opponent has a very annoying special attack? For example, Craven's SP1 has the root effect, which is very unideal for Adam Warlock, and for most champions really. So how do we avoid that? Well, we can just utilize his stun mechanic. Now Adam Warlock on the SP1 has a stun, but we can also just use the relic to extend our combo and push him over 2 bars of power. So that is the game plan for this fight, and it goes pretty well for the most part. There aren't that many slip-ups, I want to say. We go in, drop the SP2, it pushes him to 2 bars of power, and now we're just in a very good spot yet again. So this right here is the best way to play this fight, and Adam Warlock doesn't seem the best for it, but he's honestly pretty dang good for it in my opinion. And yeah, this matchup is now in our favor for sure. We go back in, drop a combo into the relic, then go again to the SP2, and it does some pretty nice damage output for sure. Look at this stuff, man. It is so good. A nice 38,000 crit, and this matchup is now over after this one combo, and there we go. So that was dealt with very well, but now we have this Ultron fight, and this is a good example of what to do when the opponent has an evade that you can control at least. So Adam Warlock can just utilize the relics here, or just utilize the stasis pod sometimes. Either or works very well, but if Ultron evade once during our sovereignty counter, then that means our counter is pretty much gone, because you have to keep on hitting the opponent and you can't be interrupted whatsoever. So that's why it's important to just always try to find a way to get the combo to keep going, right? You can't just get evaded. You don't want to like miss with him too. You just want to try to avoid both of those things. And those two things, as well as like unstoppable, can really mess up Adam Warlock if you don't play around it correctly. But if you do play around it, then it is just another simple Adam Warlock fight. So that's why it's important to master this character, because he isn't as easy as he seems. He's really complicated, and with the right gameplay, he will do great things for you for sure. But if you don't study him a bit, it can be very problematic very fast. So keep that in mind. Here I dropped the relic, and that just counters the evade, and that Ultron was dealt with very well. But now we have this Omega Sentinel boss, and Adam Warlock is, in my opinion, one of the best auto block counters in the game, because that unblockable is just so useful. And additionally, Kabam loves this node called True Lies, which means if the opponent has it, then you cannot use True Strike, True Sense, or just anything with True in it to help counter that auto block. Now Adam Warlock does not need that because he has Unblockable. So that's why Unblockable has a ton of value for me at least, and that's why he is so good against champions like Omega Sentinel, champions like Penny Parker, and nodes like True Lies. So yeah, Adam Warlock gets a ton of points in that category, and someone pointed out that I was wrong about something, that I said Adam Warlock was not the best at anything, and they disagreed because they said he was the best unblockable champion in the game. And I honestly might agree with them, because when it comes to unblockable consistency, this champion has it up pretty much all the time. And I know that Aegon does that too, but Aegon, he has to ramp up a ton. Nick Fury has to be in a second life. Like, those two unblockable kings, I feel like are dethroned by Adam Warlock, who just has it in his base kit without any cost, right? So that's why Adam Warlock, I think, is the best unblockable champion in the game when it comes to just straight up consistency and like cost to get it, right? Because there is no cost with him to get the unblockable up for the entire fight essentially. But yeah, that Omega Sentinel boss was dealt with very well because of that unblockable ability, which just is super helpful, especially for these tech champions that try to counter your auto block counter, which they do sometimes. For example, Penny Parker has True Lies built in her kit. Omega Sentinel still incinerates you if you have an auto block counter, except for unblockable, that is, which is why Adam Warlock is so good for countering her. But now we have this Nimrod boss, and this Nimrod boss pretty much has no nodes, but still Nimrod, right? Nimrod is still very annoying to deal with, especially with that very annoying Unstoppable, which is really good at countering Adam Warlock. But if we can just avoid that, then we should be in the clear, which we do for the most part, but then it goes very south very fast when it does show up. But for the most part, this boss fight is very, very fun. And Nimrod is no easy defender as well. He has access to a ton of armor up. He has cowardice, power drain. He has access to unblockable as well. Very hard to dodge special ones. He also has unstoppable, like I said. Just very annoying, right? But of course, Adam Warlock isn't the best counter. He is just a counter. And look at what I did there. When he went unblockable, I dropped my stasis pod to help, mitigate the damage output. But keep in mind, it can only activate once per fight that way. So yeah, I mitigated that one, but the other one I just had to take straight to the face, which is kind of funny. Here he goes unstoppable, which is Adam Warlock's biggest weakness, I feel like. So yeah, that is not fun at all. Here he drops the SP1. We get hit again, which is just not good, but this matchup is over anyway. So a bit of a shaky trial, but it is complete. So good job, Adam Warlock. Now let's go to the dangerous parts of the contest. Here we have Eternity of Pain as well as Grandmaster's Gauntlet. Some of the hardest content in the game when it comes to just very annoying nodes and very annoying bosses. For example, right here, this Nick Fury boss. Now, this Nick Fury boss is a very general boss, which means that he can be taken with a lot of characters, but Adam Warlock's way of dealing with him is honestly very, very unique, because with Adam Warlock's SP1, with his stasis pod, he can help mitigate a ton of the SP1s that Nick Fury usually does throw. And with him not having to block ever, he counters the defective defense node also. So that's why Adam Warlock is honestly a very surprising counter to this Nick Fury boss, and he does do it very, very well. Now, of course, Nick Fury can always just not play ball, and that just goes into the category of Adam Warlock being AI reliant, which honestly in this fight there is a bit of AI reliance, because if Nick Fury just doesn't throw the special attack, then things go south very, very quickly. But thankfully he played ball here, except he didn't. So I had to just try to alter my strategy a bit. I dropped the SP1 out of panic, but then I just utilized that to help get him aggressive again, which it did work. So we are now in the clear for the rest of my counter, which is now complete. So we are in a good spot yet again. Here he gets the power lock on him, which is perfect. And now we're just in a great spot for the rest of this matchup. So yeah, it is a very fun fight for sure. Adam Warlock does counter it very, very well. And the result is just a ton of damage output that is just beautiful to witness. And here we go back in. He's in the second life now, pretty much. There he purifies my taunt, so keep that in mind, right? My taunt is now purified, so once we get out of this, he's going to play very passively. So I'm like, okay, there is no point in trying to bait this if he just won't be aggressive at all. So let me just lose the counter purposely, and then let's go back in afterwards and just try to finish off this fight with the final sovereignty counter. And the plan goes pretty well. I seem to bait one more SP2, then we'll be in the clear, and he drops it right there. So now we're in a good spot for sure. We go back in, drop the counter, and get it activated. Here I drop the SP2, and look at this damage output. It is just very, very good. A nice 54,000 crit right there. Here it drops the SP2. Doesn't matter. I go back in, drop the SP1, and the fight is now over. So that was very, very well done by Adam Warlock. It was kind of a marathon for sure, but once Adam Warlock got going, he was very, very hard to stop. Now we have this Hercules fight, and this Hercules fight is honestly one of the best ones for Adam Warlock, which seems surprising, right? Because there is a ton of concussions and a ton of infuriate as well. And both of those things sound very, very bad for Adam Warlock, except they're not, because once Adam Warlock has a sovereignty buff, his future buffs cannot have their ability accuracy modified. So that is why he is really good for this fight, because with that ability, there is no infuriate to worry about, there is no concussions to worry about. You just need to do damage output, and Adam Warlock is really good at doing damage output. So yeah, he is pretty strong for this fight for sure. Here we drop the SP2. It does some pretty nice damage output, a nice 52,000 crit right there, and we are just in a great spot for the rest of this match. Now, this Hercules can go south very, very fast because it is Hercules, and he can just not play ball at all. And if he just stays there blocking, then you are just in a ton of trouble. But thankfully, Adam Warlock does have unblockable, which means he can just, for the most part, counter the rest of this fight with his base abilities. So yeah, Hercules is honestly one of the hardest fights in the Eternity of Pain, but Adam Warlock just deals with it so well. And of course, it can always go south. It's not too consistent, but being able to take one of the hardest bosses in a very hard piece of content is a pretty strong feat for sure. And yeah, the rest of this fight just goes pretty well. There I whiff somehow, and that was very annoying, but besides that, the rest of the fight is pretty dang clean. But yeah, this fight, it was a fun one for sure. It of course is pretty stressful because it is Hercules, and like this can just always go very south, but he played ball here for sure, and he just really helped me out. And yeah, the rest of this fight is just me trying to wait out the immortality, which is of course very annoying because he is now unblockable as well. Here I drop the SP1 and we go back in afterwards, and this fight is now not over yet because of the other indestructible, but now after this combo it is finally done with. So that was a pretty fun fight. It was still a very good feat in my opinion, but now we have this vision fight, and this vision fight is really good at showing Adam Warlock's fight control, because this has, I believe it is called Surging Vengeance, where he drops the SP1, he drops the SP2, and then afterwards he is guaranteed to drop the SP3, and that SP3 just one-shots you. But Adam Warlock has Taunt, and Taunt is great at getting the opponent to throw special attacks, usually, because it's not like 100% consistent. They're not guaranteed to throw it at any time, so keep that in mind. It can go south for sure, but if Taunt works properly, it is a great way of just trying to do this fight the easiest way possible, which is just by letting him throw special attacks when he shouldn't, which is always a fun time for sure. Here I go back in, I drop the relic, I drop another combo after the SP1, and now we're just in a pretty good spot because yeah, the SP1 is a great way to keep the damage output going, which it does right here. And yeah, I drop it again, now we're at 31 charges, we're doing 26,000 mediums as well. Drop it one more time right here, and this should almost do it. Not guaranteed, but we get some nice damage output there for sure. We just need one more SP2, which he does drop, and now we're in the clear for the rest of the fight. So yeah, a very good fight by Adam Warlock. Of course, it can go south for sure if he just doesn't play ball, and like you lose your counter, you lose your taunt, he just doesn't throw a special attack for some reason. Any of that can happen, right? Keep that in mind. It's not a very consistent fight, but it is pretty good overall once you get it down properly. But now we have this Modok fight, and this is just a good example of Adam Warlock being a crazy good auto block counter, because this fight, it can be done with true strike characters and true accuracy characters and true sense characters, but also Adam Warlock just does it the best in my opinion. When it comes to like countering auto block in a different way, I know Undermine is good as well. Like Gore has it, Super Scroll has it, who I don't know why I mentioned him when people don't use him, but still he does have it. But Unblockable is just like the classic, right? It's just so strong still, and this fight is a perfect example of that, right? So yeah, we go back in, drop 27,000 mediums, but it is inflated because of stun vulnerability. But besides that, it's still very good damage output, right? And you can hit that without the node anyway, so it's no big deal. The counter starts up again, and we get it going with the light attack into block. We drop the SP1 again. Doesn't stun, but it's fine because the next one will stun for sure. So we drop it after this SP1 that he throws. And yeah, now we're just chilling because we drop it again. We're at 27 charges, which is pretty good. We're doing a ton of damage at this point now. And yeah, he just controls the fight so well. I love it so much when he has the ideal matchup. When he doesn't have the ideal matchup, it is a bit hard to work around everything, but it can still be managed, right? There I drop it into the block, which is no big deal because the spacing is good enough to where I can just react properly after it. And there I drop the relic, I drop a combo, and that seals the deal for this final trial. So Adam Warlock did very good in the final trial. And overall in this video, he just did pretty well. Some hiccups for sure, but he managed most of it, and like if there was a problem, he just worked around it with his own mechanics. So this was a very fun trial, well, set of trials actually, but I have one more that is planned, and it is probably the biggest trial for him because it involves consistency, but more on that in a later video. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Adam Warlock, and yeah, that's about it from me.